Welcome back. After a little bit of a hiatus, the Jungle Fever podcast has returned. I think, and honestly, was okay. Right, we had a long and sustained period of kind of quiet. Right, life got busy for the both of us. I know it's a busy time frame. I went on vacation for a little bit. Aiden had a lot of stuff going on as well. But I think it's a good time to come back right here in the middle of June, right? It's still kind of that quiet part of the NFL season, or I really less of the NFL news cycle where, you've got guys in the building. The Bengals are in organized team activities at the moment. Most everybody is there. And, you're hearing a lot of things coming out of camp, some good, some bad, all that, but it's so early in the process that it's, so hard to really take a lot from what's going on at the moment. No pads, of course, nobody's hitting anybody just yet, but we're getting closer and closer to training camp here, and we're getting closer and closer to the NFL season. But as it has been a couple of weeks since we have hopped on here on the Jungle Fever podcast, let's start by talking out with some news we saw a couple of weeks ago. This is now a little bit of old news, but I think it's worth starting off with today. Aiden and I have been banging this drum for a long time, and in an off season of change, the theme continues as the Bengals do opt for a restructure of Joe Burrow's contract. It saves $10 million against this season's cap. Joe Burrow will still make the same amount of money. A common misconception about restructures is that it costs players money. No, it doesn't. It typically just pays them in a different type of way. A lot of teams will use like high signing bonuses to offset cap and to make more space to pay guys in a short period of time. And the Bengals didn't quite do what, like the 2010 Saints or even the 2020s Eagles have done in a lot of times where they basically threw the kitchen sink at some of their contracts to try and prioritize winning. This is a prioritized winning move, but it's not the, oh my God, we have no money kind of move. They're trying to free up a little bit of money so that they could potentially go out and sign an external free agent or two if they so feel like it. Obviously, I know it is June, but there are a couple of names out there. And it's
Bobby
more,
Wagner's still on the couch, hanging out.
you know, and I think it's more for, I think, as the conversations here head into June and July, some of these contract numbers and extensions that we're looking at, especially some of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. Aiden, what was your reaction to kind of seeing that come down? Obviously, the Bengals don't do this very often. What was the feeling there when they were able to get a restructure done with their number one guy in Joe Burrow?
Well, number one, I shouldn't feel this way, but I did. I had to check like five different sources to like make sure that I wasn't like getting sent out or whatever. Because like this is just something they don't do. Again, it's one of those things. So Rappaport obviously reported it first, and I was like, okay, I mean, I trust Rappaport, but like, is this the real account? Is this a parody account? Let me look. Schefter, same thing. And it just shows me that I think inside the building, the powers that be are finally kind of giving into the fact that, hey, what we're
Had
doing here recently isn't working. And we need to change or we're going to get left behind. And it makes sense, especially with the new Dexter Lawrence deal. I think some of the money is freed up for that. You also, like you said, you have a couple defensive players on the table that still need a contract, they feel like. And there's still, I think, some holes in this team that can be filled up as well. So it just made sense. It feels like a no-brainer. I mean, the Chiefs have restructured Patrick Mahomes' deal. They just did it again.
mm,
It feels like they've done that seven
a
times since
lot of
he signed
times.
that deal. Like it, what? It was a 10-year deal when he first signed it, right? And I feel like they've restructured it at least four or five times. The smart teams do it. It just makes sense. And so it was a no-brainer. I don't want to give them too much credit for doing it because it
But
is
long
such a
enough,
no-brainer.
right?
But like this is how I'm feeling. Like I feel good about it. It's weird.
And again, the whole, I think, and we're going to talk a lot about actually just a few moments ago before we recorded here on the If we were recording about 5:30 p.m. Eastern time here. The Athletic and Paul Denter Jr. just dropped a very notable interview with Katie Blackburn, who is, of course, a very important figure in the Bengals front office, one of the key decision makers for a lot of what the Bengals have done. And this has been an offseason of change and a pivotal change, and I think you're seeing a fan base that is as I think rejuvenated is the word. I think a fan base that is as rejuvenated as any in the NFL coming into 2026, right? I think you have a sense of hope that I don't think you've seen this team have. Obviously, when you've got Burrow and you have Chase, right? There's always that hope that, okay, we can put things together. But when you look at what they did, really going all the way back to February and what's gone on in these few months since, it has been an offseason of change. And here we are now, they're making big moves.
Yeah, look, I know people don't want to do it because of the past and the way that they dealt with things previously, but you have to give the front office credit.
Yeah,
This was the perfect time, the perfect off season. All the stars are aligning to go all in, and you always in the back of your head thought, there's no way that this ownership group, that this front office is going to do it. There's no way they pull the trigger, and they did. Everything that they needed to do, every lever that they needed to pull, it feels like they've done that. They restructured Burrow's contract. They made the second biggest trade of the offseason. And obviously, it got superseded by the Los Angeles Rams, of course, trading for Myles Garrett. But you make that big splash that they don't typically do. You sign two top end talent guys in the first day of free agency in Brian Cook and Boye Mafe. They are they're going for it. And when you have the AFC North and you see the turnover, three new head coaches in that division itself, you have the injury to Patrick Mahomes, you have question marks outside with some of the contenders. It's wide open. It's
right there.
asking you to go
Yep.
for it. And so I think the article that you mentioned, Katie Blackburn has a great quote about that specifically. She says, "We think they deserve another opportunity to prove that we can do what we hope we can do." So she recognizes that this is a team on paper that was built to succeed. It just needed a few pieces to push it over that edge. And
100%.
credit to the front office, they found those pieces, in our opinion. Now they
And
got to go out and do
I
it.
think now you get to a point here where so many people, right, have over the last kind of, couple of seasons in particular where the Bengals have had some issues and they've had good teams, but, 2024 in particular where they had an elite offense, but the defense kind of dragged them down and the close losses kept them from what probably was a playoff team, right? But a couple of close shaves and a couple of close losses kept them out of the dance, right? You're now in a spot where you cannot point the finger at the front office if it goes wrong, right? Let's say it, and we hope, of course, that that doesn't happen. But let's say the wheels fall off this year and the Bengals have a 5 or 6 win season, the house will get cleared. Like it's that's just what's going to happen. That's the level of pressure that is on Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor in particular this offseason. I think in particular Taylor, right? I think you're at a spot now with Zach here in year 8, right? He was signed in 2019. We're heading into the 2026 season, and he has been one of the most successful Bengals head coaches of all time, right? It's kind of the state of a franchise thing more than anything. But, he's brought the Bengals to a Super Bowl. He's won, I believe, what is it, 2 division titles? Yep, 2 division titles in 21 and 22. Won more playoff games in couple of years than the Bengals had in the previous 3 decades, right? That's all, you tip your cap and you say, thank you very much, but I think you've got a season. And then Joe Burrow said it in his press conference a couple of weeks ago, where he said, this is the most talented team I've ever played on, right? And that includes some really good Bengals teams. That includes, so many teams he played on the past. You even think, I mean, obviously you can't compare college to NFL, but you think about the team he played on in college and how much talent was on that team, right? And I mean, this is as good a team as Joe Burrow has said he's ever had. So the pressure's on everybody, right? And that doesn't just go for the coaches too. I think it's important that it goes for these players as well, right? And I
Yeah.
think they know that. I think they absolutely know that. I think the building is kind of speaking to that right now. And I think this next kind of segment that we're going to get into is going to talk about this interview. Very interesting that just dropped today between some of the Bengals media members, some of the Cincinnati area media members, should say. And Katie and Elizabeth Blackburn were on this interview call. So interesting to see. By the way, Elizabeth Blackburn just got a promotion to senior vice president. So a rung up for her. We know she's kind of that younger voice, right? The daughter of Katie Blackburn. We know how important Katie is to the organization. To see Elizabeth have more of a voice, I think, is very interesting. And that promotion, I don't think, is something to just brush over. I do think Elizabeth is starting to have more pull and more power within the organization. So let's talk a little bit about this interview, Aiden, because I think there's a lot of great nuggets to discuss. And we'll start off with the topic that we're already on, which is that pressure point, right? That aspect of the fact that look, they're in win now mode, right? There's no, all right, well, we got some young pieces. Let's see how they no, you got to put the pedal to the metal in 2026. And basically, Katie and Elizabeth Blackburn said that. Katie said, quote, we think they is in Zach and Duke, deserve another opportunity to prove that we could do what we hope that we can do. We obviously are hoping to have a successful season this year. I know they, as in those same two, want to do that as much as I want to. I can't predict anything in the future, but we're certainly counting on having a good season and going from there. So again, that is as open as as this front office is going to be, right? They are, again, we know we've discussed this many times. Go back to any of our episodes from last season. Go back to any of our episodes that chronicled maybe the most tumultuous offseason in Bengals history with all of the stuff that was going on between the contracts for the wide receivers to the Trey Hendrickson saga to the Shamar Stewart to the stadium lease. I mean, it's why we kept going every single week of last summer because there was so much stuff that was going on a week by week basis. And I think it casted a cloud over camp, over the start to this team season. And they obviously also had the monkey on their back at that point of, well, week one, they lost every year, right? And obviously that changed, but then you lose your quarterback and things went south a little bit. So I think this year you've got about as unified a front as you can have.
Absolutely. Listen, a lot of Bengals fans were upset when they kept Zach Taylor this offseason after how last year went. But I think another quote from that article kind of speaks to that. She said, both Zach and Duke are experienced guys with proven success and really good people. Okay. Now, on the surface, listen, the whole like good people thing, like and all that, I accept to an extent. This is a result-based business, and you want good people in the building. Obviously, you want good leaders of your organization. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that can only get you so far. You need to see the results at a certain point. But she goes on to say, we feel good about them for a lot of reasons. I think there's also an element of consistency and hopefully will prove out to be beneficial too. I think those are the things we try to take advantage of and build on rather than having to regroup and figure things out a little bit from scratch. So like that continuity is what they're playing
Mhm.
into. And you think about offensively for Zach Taylor, the entire offense is back. Literally the whole offense is back. You want
And that
people
offense has been as good as any in the National
right,
Football League over the last couple of years.
right. And Zach Taylor is the architect behind that offense, whether you want to admit it or not. He is the one who is putting people where they need to be.
I'm gonna say something right now. If Zach Taylor were to be fired, he would not be out of a job very long.
No,
Just gonna throw that out there. He would
no.
be, you know where he'd go? He'd go right back to LA. He would go join McVay. McVay would pick him up. He'd be an offensive analyst or assistant or something. And, there's a reason why he's on the McVay tree, right? There's a lot of lessons that he clearly learned from Sean McVay and what he's been able to do offensively in LA over the course
Right.
of the season and over the course of a lot of battles, obviously one in particular, but a lot of battles against one another.
But
A
yeah,
lot of
I
other
say that
interest.
just to,
Go
I say
ahead.
that to say this, like the with the turnover in the North and what you have, it made no sense timeline wise. This was not the offseason to move on from him. Like
And the coaches pool as well. It wasn't like there was
it
like a Ben
and that's the
Johnson. Yeah.
and yeah, and that's also too like and so you talk about no excuses. Like obviously for Zach Taylor, this is a season of no excuses. For Al Golden, this is a season of
Mhm.
no excuses for that guy.
You
Last
ran
year
you ran the leash about as long as it could have gotten last year.
Last year, you
And
gave them the benefit of the doubt of you just didn't have the guys in the building, right? You didn't have the talent to compete. Now you have Dexter Lawrence. Now you have Boye Mafe. Now you have Brian Cook. Now you have another year of DJ Turner. Now you have Dax Hill solidified in his role. There is no more excuses for that coach. And I think if you want to talk about pressure within the building, obviously, I think Zach Taylor's one, but not too far behind him is Al Golden. If this defense comes out flat like it did last year, any semblance of last year, I think he's out of a job very quickly.
yeah, I don't think that they will hesitate to be quick with things, I think is the way to put it. Like, I think, especially when you look at, where this team's at and how schedule is early, right? You've got some tough games to start out the year. You get Tampa at home with, a solid offense with some good weapons in week one. And then you go right to one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best, in week number two in Houston. So you better be up and ready to go to start the season out, or you're going to be staring at 0-2 real quick if you're not careful. So again, and I think the Bengals know this, right? And I think this vibe has been like all throughout camp is that they need to start ready, start fast, and be ready to get going off of the jump.
Fast start. I
Obviously, a
mean,
lot of
I'm
other,
just a circle. It's just a loop. We talk
yeah,
about the fast start from the Bengals every year.
yeah. I feel like if we started this podcast in like 2019, we would have said the same thing, even though that Bengals roster would lose to this Bengals roster by about 90 points. So let's talk about some of the other key points from this interview that again, this dropped it. I'm reading this athletic article came out at about 8, literally 10 minutes before we started recording. So maybe it's a good thing that we recorded a little bit later in the day because there's some really, really good tidbits in here. You mentioned DJ Turner. Notably in this, a lot of the media members asked about DJ Turner, and notably last week, DJ Turner mentioned that contact had been established between his team and the Bengals regarding a potential extension. We talked about this a little bit earlier on in some of our videos. I think this is a deal that gets done. I don't know when. I don't know exactly what the numbers are going to look like, but I do feel like this deal gets done. The fact that DJ Turner is at OTAs, I think signifies a lot of the goodwill and good faith right now that's happening in negotiations. You're seeing, a lot of other people dealing with this. Heck, the Bengals' week one opponent, Baker Mayfield, right now is in a contract dispute with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're seeing a lot of players right now that are in this. We see it every offseason, right? Of players that are holding out for more money or a better deal or whatever. The fact that DJ Turner's at OTAs, I think, is a good faith sign. How many times we have this conversation with Trey Hendrickson, but I think this one feels a lot more good faith than anything that happened with Trey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the thing, right? The feeling is like at least I will say with DJ is like the feeling is that it will get done. Dax, I don't know if I'm as confident
Mm,
in. But the extension with DJ feels like it's something that is on the table and will get done. I mean, the quote that Blackburn had obviously is not going to give a whole lot. They're never going to give a lot when they talk about contract extension like that. Um, but with the Trey situation, it very much was just friction. You could tell that they were very far apart. They didn't get what they wanted, and you can blame whoever you want in that situation. I think there's a lot of blame to go around in that situation. But at the end of the day, it just didn't seem like a healthy relationship. Now, with the DJ Turner situation, it seems like, he's committed to the team. You mentioned that he is at OTAs. He is a part of the team. He despite everything that's going on, he's somebody that you can kind of count on. Excuse me. And so even Zach Taylor said that the energy level is it's exceptionally high. And I think that's one of the underrated things about bringing in a guy like Dexter Lawrence in. Like he's a spark plug for your team. He's so infectious with his energy, a defense that had so many issues and were just drugged through the mud constantly. He brings everyone up. DJ Turner can be a part of that. And I think regardless of if a deal gets done or not this offseason, I think he's very much going to be a key role, obviously, of this defense. But you run into the issue of if you let it go till next year, he might play himself out of a contract and all of a
yeah.
sudden a little too expensive.
We had this conversation with Murphy, right? Where if, this is, with the Bengals declining that Murphy option, you kind of have this pinch point now here with Miles Murphy where, let's say Miles Murphy has a 6 sack season, right? Maybe, depending on factors, maybe that's an okay season. It's probably a little underwhelming for him. Then maybe the Bengals do kind of something what they did with Joseph Osai, right? Where they bring him back year, kind of the same sort of thing, situation he's in right now. And then Osai went out, played okay, decently well, and got himself a nice payday in New York with the Jets. It could be something similar for Miles Murphy, right? And maybe even for Dax Hill, right? And that's the kind of weird spot that this Bengals defense is in. You're paying Dexter Lawrence a lot of money. We have spoken at length about how much is invested in the offense for the Bengals with obviously Burrow and T and Jamar on big time deals and a number of these other guys on big time deals as well. Marius Mims is going to be knocking on the door about a contract here relatively soon as well. So you have an interesting spot here for this defense and three key players. I think that if it were up to the Bengals, they'd want to keep all three. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it.
Right. To your point, five Bengals make 20 or more million dollars per season. It's Burrow, it's Chase, it's T, Boye now, and then Dexter
Hmm.
Lawrence. So you have to get creative about how you want to do that. I think they kind of signaled how they want to do that with how they drafted. We talked about that a little bit, but Decario Davis is very much an outside corner. I think Dax played too well to move him back to the slot, and he seems like the odd man out, unfortunately, when you look at the structure of the
Yeah,
team.
and based on the early intel that we've seen from OTAs, Takario Davis is not the starting slot corner. In fact, he's not playing there at all.
No, no,
They
that's
have
no.
They have done a lot of cool things with him. In fact, it does, we talked about this a lot when he got drafted. It does seem like they want to play him in that kind of Trey Flowers tight end stopping role, which is exactly what we said they should do, right? With the frame and with his ability on the ball and his big size. But he's not going to be a slot corner. He's 6'5". He doesn't
Yeah,
fit that mold, right? It's
no.
just not going to go well. Imagine he ends up against, I'm trying to think of like a good example. Imagine if he were up against like a prime Tyler Boyd, right? A guy who's an elite route runner who would just be able to get open very easily. And with as athletically gifted as Davis is, he's just not going to be able, that's not the assignment for him. I think people putting him there was just, it was a lazy kind of take, at least from the assumptions that I made. But I mean, again, Takario Davis has a big role to play. Slot corner is still an interesting spot for the Bengals, and we're going to talk about that a lot more over these coming weeks. There are a lot of opportunities for guys like Jalen Davis, Josh Newton, some other players as well to potentially get some big reps there at CB3. So again, that kind of jigsaw puzzle, all to be determined. I do think the Bengals will re-sign DJ Turner. The other two, I mean, you could flip a coin. Do you want to sign one? I think they could. I think I agree with you. I just think Dax is going to end up being that guy that they can't do. And it's the question of can they get it done can they get a number locked in with Murphy? I think would be the interesting question. Can they try and find a middle ground? Because obviously, let's say, on the flip side of the other season, let's say Murphy goes out there and has a 13 sack season, right? All of a sudden, you saw what Jalen Phillips just got paid in Carolina, and Miles Murphy's going to go out there on the open market and get $130 million over 4 years, right? The Bengals cannot pay that.
No.
So that's the tightrope that you have to walk here with Miles Murphy, and the whole situation could get very interesting depending on which direction the Bengals go. A
I
couple
think it's
other little, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say real quick before we pivot, another underrated guy kind of in this conversation is Chase Brown. I just feel
Mm.
like he quietly kind of swept under the rug of like he's on the same contract that Miles Murphy and those guys are on. Like he's coming up on his last year of his deal soon as well.
He's
So
also on a fifth round draft pick contract, which is a little
right,
bit different than a first or a second round pick, a little
right.
less money, a little less
So
everything. So
he's one of those guys again. It's just that conversation. There's some decisions that have to be made here soon. So I just didn't want
absolutely.
to gloss over him. I think he's
No, I
been
think it's an
underrated.
important part of the equation, right? And
Yeah,
there's the whole paying a running back conversation, which is, the Bengals did it once with Mixon, and that worked out pretty well, I think, in their favor. And
but you
I
see
think now it's the question,
how much he's a part of the offense, like
right?
and his ability as a pass catcher. You don't feel great about paying running backs a ton of money. I've always been somebody who like I'm not a huge fan of paying certain running backs a lot of money. Obviously, the top end guys are different. A guy like Bijan, they don't fall on trees, off trees. But like a guy like Chase Brown and his ability to impact the offense and what he does, I see
And
a
then
world where they'll keep him.
you saw Kenneth Walker get, what was it? Was it 3 years, 45
I
to
think so.
42 with the Chiefs?
Let me look.
Um,
3 year is 43.
okay. So I think Chase
Max
Brown would be
value of 45.
I don't know if Chase Brown would make quite that much money, but I think that's around the ballpark of what he'd be looking for, right? Like a 3 year, maybe 38, 39, right? Which is a lot to pay a running back, right? And that's the question now that you have to ask. And it's again, that's why that restructure is so important, right? Because I think that opens up space for you get some of these done now. And you have to get some of these done now because you're gonna run out of money in the offseason. You're gonna run out of space. And then you're going to have a real problem. It doesn't matter if the Bengals don't make playoffs or if they win the Super Bowl, right? It's still going to be a problem come March, come all those discussions. So, some other little things from this breakdown. The front office did admit and say that they are actively looking to try and host the NFL draft in Cincinnati. It has been rumored, right, for a couple of years. Obviously, the next two are already set. Next year is over in Washington, D.C. It'll be a big ceremony with the Commanders getting their new field up and running. And then 2028, you better pack your winter coats. It's going up to Minneapolis. It'll probably still be freezing cold in late
Hopefully
April.
inside.
Yeah, hopefully for the fans. I won't be there, but hopefully for the fans that are there. And it's been rumored that that 2029 one is the one that the Bengals are trying to target to host the draft in Cincinnati. We've already seen it in two other AFC North cities. It was in Cleveland in 2021, and it was just in Pittsburgh this past year. You saw, how it was able to be done in Pittsburgh. And I think you see the potential for it in Cincinnati as well. And you grew up in Cincinnati. I think you know the area a little bit better. Like, tell me a little bit about what you think it could mean for the city of Cincinnati to host the NFL draft, and then, some potential spots, some potential places that they might be able to throw this draft at should they get the rights from the NFL.
Yeah, I think for obvious reasons, I think Cincinnati is just a very good sports city, in my opinion. It kind of lives and breathes sports, specifically like high school athletics means a lot to the area.
Absolutely.
They grow up loving it. You think about these big schools like Moeller and X, and football on Friday nights is so big. That carries over to, unfortunately, they haven't been good in recent years, but that carries over to UC football and a
Hmm.
dedicated fan base for that. And then obviously you have the Bengals. This is a town that I think lives and breathes that sport. It's a baseball city at the end of the day, but football is not incredibly far behind it. So I think this is a fan base that deserves it and wants it. Now you run into some of the other questions, and just in terms of where are you going to host it? What do hotels like? Do you have the infrastructure to support something like this? And I think that's the part that's slightly a hang up for it. Now, if they have it down by the river, that would be incredible. I mean,
Can you
honestly,
imagine it? I mean, I don't think it's possible simply because I just don't think you can fit that many people down there. But could you imagine if they threw it like right in front of Great American Ballpark and like they somehow found a way to do it by the banks?
yeah,
Like
the
they'd have
fence
to
is a
shut
little too
everything
tight. It's a little
down.
too tight.
It is a little too tight, but I mean, I can only imagine. You see, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Reds opening day is like Christmas morning in Cincinnati. And I was actually lucky enough to be able to be there this year, and it is as
Right.
advertised. It is an absolutely wild scene. You've got people out there in red and white all day long. It's just a crazy atmosphere. And we know, like, and we've talked about this, Cincinnati brings it for their sports, right? Whether it's the Bengals, whether it's the Reds, even FC Cincinnati, you've seen them have a lot of success over the last couple of years. You see, right? You saw that magical run back in 2021, right? They will bring it for their sports teams. And I think that this would just be a testament, and it shows just how much the city of Cincinnati really is. Like, it's just like, obviously it's a baseball town and they love their Bengals too, but it's a sports town, man. Like
Yeah,
it,
it is.
they care a whole lot. And I love that you brought up the high school sports. We saw just this past year, Moeller, or no, excuse me, it was St. X versus Elder in a postseason playoff game in football, filled the entire lower dome of Paycor Stadium. I mean, 25,000 people there for that game. Just, it was an unreal atmosphere. And that's how much people care, right? You're going to watch, 15 to 18-year-olds play high school football, and you're filling out half an NFL stadium. So yeah, and I've said it before, I think, on this podcast. I think Ohio's in the top five of high school football in the entire country. And Cincinnati reflects that. The whole state reflects that. But Cincinnati in particular, where you've got these unbelievable schools, even some of the small school football as well. It's just it starts at the bottom and it works its way all the way up to the top.
Yeah.
Media day photos just dropped for the Bengals. Couple of big pictures, including a first picture of Dexter Lawrence in the number 97 in pads. That one is going to be good. You can go check it out after you finish listening to us. It's some good
It still
content.
doesn't feel real. Does it feel
No,
real
I
to
don't think it
you?
will until you see him. I think the week number one,
That
I think,
first sexy Dexy dance, I think, is when it's gonna
yeah.
hit.
Yeah, that first I think that first run out, I think like they'll give him his own special intro there on week number one. I think that'll be the one there. And I think then when he comes out, he'll do his little dance when he runs out. And I think that'll be the moment it kind of injects some life. And I think bigs
Do you see
cheer
him
the
throw
run
out
out.
the first pitch at the
He
Reds game?
did. He did. which was cool.
So, I mean, again, I can't understate how big of a move that is. I know the recent Miles Garrett trade kind of makes it feel whatever, but like, he just brings so much to a defense that
We never
needed.
got to talk about that. Adios. See you later.
Yeah, yeah, we have a little bit of time. I mean, thank God.
See you later.
I have never been happier about it. Now, if the Bengals want to get to where they want to get to, they might have to see him again down the line, but that's way down the line. Oh my goodness, he won't have to be terrorized by, or he being Joe Burrow, won't have to be terrorized by Miles Garrett 2 times a year. Thank goodness. I mean, there's no one happier than Joe Burrow for that trade.
No. I mean, and that was one of Miles' favorite targets was Mr. Burrow. So yeah, he is out of the division. See you later. I don't know if we've discussed Rodgers officially being back while we're talking the division. Aaron Rodgers back. This is the last ride. It is now confirmed. Um,
I think that's incredibly problematic for the Steelers.
I
I
think
think
so
it's
too.
horrendous for the Steelers.
Like
But as a Bengals fan, I'm happy.
Well, it's like and like on paper, I mean, the Steelers like it's not a bad roster. Like this won't. I don't think this will be a bad team. Like they'll win, at minimum probably 7 games, but I don't see them getting past 9, maybe 10. Right? They're going to be in that Steeler range, right? Where and obviously now that Tomlin's gone, will they keep the streak going of 9-8 or I guess 500 or better? We will see, but. They went out, they got Michael Pittman, right, which I think is a good deal, right? I think he complements DK Metcalf very well. But aside from that, I just like I'm just not moved by a lot of what they've done. And
No,
again, if they prove me wrong, we're gonna have one friend in particular who's gonna be in our ear, and there's gonna be many more who are gonna be, jostling because that's how Steeler fans are. But like, I just don't see it. And again, if they prove me wrong, fair enough. But I
Aaron
just
Rodgers was one of, if I
he wasn't
believe,
good.
I think he was 33rd or 32nd in EPA per dropback last year. Specifically too, when he's trying to push the ball downfield. The league is built right now on explosive pass plays, specifically in heavy sets off of play action. Look at what Seattle and Kubiak did this year, and what they were able to do with JSN. You need to be able to push the ball downfield. You need explosive pass plays. Aaron Rodgers is not doing that for you in the big year of 2026. And so
Maybe maybe half
I
a
don't get it.
decade ago. Not
Right.
anymore.
It's not happening. I just don't get it. I don't. What is their direction? I don't know.
They don't have one. I think that's the big thing for them, right? I think I just like you gotta just nuke it. And
You
they
got to be
won't
bad. You have to
because
be
they
bad.
have they have the ego. I think it's top down now. Like it was Tomlin at one point, but I think now it's just like it's Art, it's Rooney, it's Omar Khan. It's like it's just the entire setup, right? I think they're just all so like the head is so ballooned, right? And they're still living off, Super Bowl 42 that like it's just, I mean, Super Bowl 42 was almost 2 decades ago. We're in into this is gonna be Super Bowl 61, by the way, this year. So, I don't know what else to say. But
Yeah.
the Browns are the Browns, the Steelers are the Steelers, the Ravens, they'll probably be all right. They're pretty good. They've got some good
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. 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 I think now, well, this is an interesting question before we go. Miles Garrett out of the conference, out of the AFC. Who is the best defender in the AFC in your opinion? Regardless, it doesn't have to be
In the
AFC North.
AFC, like
AFC in
as the
general.
whole conference.
Yep.
Okay.
Miles
You
Garrett
got to go
gone.
through. I think the best defender in the conference. I don't know how crazy you take this is. I think it's Pat Surtain.
No, I don't hate that. I was going to say Kyle Hamilton because
That's
we
a
were
fair.
talking
I think.
we talked
I
earlier.
think you could say Surtain. I think you could say Hamilton. I think you can make an argument for a couple of other
Dexter
guys.
Lawrence. No.
Maybe. Maybe. I think you make the argument. Gotta go through. I
I don't think
mean,
we're missing
yeah.
anybody.
I'm sure we are, but like, I'm not doing the whole exercise.
No, I just wanted to
I
throw that
mean,
out
maybe,
there.
oh, Will Anderson, I
Oh,
think's in the
sure.
conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
I
was gonna
mean,
say I
worst
don't think
season
we're
he
missing
had,
anybody.
he just made
Yeah,
himself a whole lot of money.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think Anderson is definitely up
Those
there.
three, Anderson, Hamilton, or Surtain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, you're talking Ravens. They're gonna be all right. They're gonna be all right because Kyle Hamilton's there, Lamar's there. But
Yeah, they might get
the
we
weakness.
talked about it I think when we did talk last, but I think Nnamdi Madubuike is gonna play this season, which is important for them. They're gonna need him on the inside.
Mhm.
Um uh but yeah, obviously, I guess we'll get closer to wrapping things up. Obviously, we're keeping our eye on Bengals camp. A lot of interesting things coming out. Burrow's been in the building. Jamar actually has not been in the building, but he just got to the building this past week, I believe. I think he is there now. He's back in Cincinnati. I think almost everybody is here, I guess, in Cincinnati at this point now. Um, the vibes, again, I don't think they could be much higher. From the quick things you're seeing here and there. Obviously, there's a lot going on right now. My Knicks just won the NBA Finals. You got the World Cup going crazy. The hockey just wrapped up. So a lot of focus on other sports but football at the moment. But it will be September before you know it. And the Bengals will need to be ready to go right off the jump. Like we said, tough start against some good football teams. They're going to need to get that early start going because then that we talked about it again, that middle of that schedule, very workable. And there are a lot of winnable games on there against some teams that they'll be expected to beat. They got to be ready for it from the jump. So unless you got any closing thoughts, I'm cool with
No,
wrapping it up
I think
right
we're
there.
done.
Good episode, good quick talk. We'll be back. Probably next week. We'll be watching camp. We'll be seeing things. I don't know when the official start of training camp is. I believe it's after July 4th. But I think once you get past that, and then you get into camp, and then then the ball starts rolling. You get into preseason and
July
start.
29th.
Okay, yeah. So you got about a month and a half, but we still got OTAs here for I believe another couple of weeks, and then they'll go back. They'll have their last mini off season before the real work starts in the heat of the summer in July. But Braden Crowley, I've been Ethan Sargent saying so long. Good to be back on the Jungle Fever podcast. We'll have more content coming up over the next week. We will see you next time on the Jungle Fever Pod.